When I was a little kid and growing up, I was always given the impression that a new car would lose roughly half of its value in its first 3 years. That was the norm. Perhaps supercars would be a little bit stronger, but there's more to this story.
At 38, Shmee150 confirms that the rumors are true, and the rumors were never about the cars. They were about the money. For years, the most repeated question across his comment sections was not about horsepower or lap times. It was, how does he actually afford this?
I create videos and share them through the channel across Shmee150, the Shmuseum, and throughout the business. It means that each of these cars are able to generate revenues. Now, while I'm lucky that that's the case on one hand, on the other hand, I also have to pay more for insurance and a lot more on servicing.
A Ford GT, a McLaren Senna, a Ferrari SF90 Stradale, a garage full of machines most people will never see in person, owned and driven by a man with no racing career, no television deal, and no inheritance anyone has ever located. The theories spread quietly at first, then loudly. A wealthy family, a silent backer, ownership that looked different off camera than on it. As the collection grew, the doubt compounded, and he never answered it, until now. Because the confirmed answer, the real one, built on verified facts and a timeline most of his audience never saw, turns out to be more interesting than any rumor ever was. A name that shouldn't work. His real name is Timothy John Burton, born the 17th of September 1987 in London. He goes by Shmee150 officially.
The first time that I used the username Shmee, which unsurprisingly, eventually when I came to sign up for something, was already taken, and that meant it offered me, would you like Shmee 98765, Shmee 0000, Shmee150, and I clicked it because it was the shortest.
And the channel built around that name has crossed 1 billion total views, holds nearly 3 million subscribers, and sits at the very top of the supercar content world, a position it has held for over 15 years. But here's the catch. Nothing about the origin of this story suggests any of that was inevitable. No racing background, no automotive industry connections, no film school, no trust fund that anyone has ever been able to identify or point to. What Tim Burton had, at the start, was a job in the City of London, a camera, and a love of cars that had nowhere productive to go except online. That is the raw material the entire empire was built from. And the reason the rumor about where the money comes from has never quite gone away is that most people, when they look at what the channel became, genuinely cannot reconcile the starting point with the destination. The gap looks too wide. The jump looks too clean. So they filled it in with theories about what must have been hidden. What they missed was simpler and less dramatic than any of those theories. The starting point was further back than they realized, and the gap had been quietly closing for years before most of them were watching.
I had my channel technically since July 2006, but I only used it in the early days for uploading funny videos with friends, sports matches at school, family holidays, your typical home videos, not stuff that I ever positioned or planned to become what it has done since.
The life nobody talks about. What most people don't realize is that before Shmee150 was anything, Tim Burton had already lived through 2 completely different versions of his working life, and both of them collapsed. After finishing school around 2005, having passed his A-levels, he didn't go to university. Instead, he started a business, an electronics web store, built and run from scratch until he eventually sold it. That should have been the beginning of a trajectory. It wasn't. He took the proceeds and did something almost no one around him would have predicted. He left England and went to New Zealand to become a ski instructor, a young man from London who would one day build one of the most recognized automotive brands in the world. Spent a significant chapter of his 20s teaching people to ski on the other side of the planet. Not because he had a plan, because he wanted to. And then the plan ended for him, violently and without warning. He fell. The injury was serious enough to force him home. Whatever version of his life he had been constructing in New Zealand, the identity, the career, the daily rhythm of a life built around mountains and snow, was over, not wound down gradually. Ended. He came back to England with no clear direction, started studying briefly, stopped after a few weeks, and eventually landed a job in the technology team of an investment consultancy firm in the City of London. Stable, respectable, a sensible move for a young man who needed to regroup and completely, utterly removed from anything he actually cared about. 2 businesses, 2 countries, 2 attempts at a life that didn't hold. And get this? That is the moment the Shmee 1-5. O's story actually begins, not with a business plan, not with a camera purchase, with a man sitting in a finance job, recovering from a fall he didn't choose, doing work that had nothing to do with the thing he had loved his entire life. Spotted. Around 2008, Tim started posting pictures of cars he spotted on the streets of London to his Facebook page and to online forums. No strategy, no monetization thinking, no audience in mind beyond other enthusiasts who shared the same obsession. He was just a guy who noticed extraordinary machines in ordinary places and felt compelled to document them. A Ferrari parked on a Tuesday, a Lamborghini outside a restaurant. The kind of sightings that most people walk past without a second glance. But that stopped him completely every single time. He documented them because the alternative, doing nothing, felt like a waste of something worth recording.
I'd been posting for years on a private Facebook group, on web forums like Piston Heads, just static pictures of things that I'd seen around London going about my commute to work, just driving around or cycling around, whatever it might be. And this was really the start for me of uploading videos to YouTube.
What most people don't realize is that this phase of the story lasted 2 full years, before a single frame of YouTube video was ever recorded. 2 years of car spots, 2 years of forum posts and Facebook uploads, 2 years of building an audience and a reputation in a niche online community, entirely without video, entirely without a platform that would eventually make him famous. The habit came first. The platform came after. That sequence matters more than it might seem. 2 cars and a camera. Then, in January 2010, something happened that Tim has described as the beginning of everything. He was at a Top Gear event when 2 cars appeared in the same place at the same time. A Ferrari 45 8 Italia and a Lamborghini Murcielago LP670-4 Super Veloce. Brand new. Together. In person. Picture that moment.
And a friend let me know that at Bibendum, the Michelin building in London, there was a Top Gear magazine awards night going on, which happened to have 2 very cool cars outside, which were a Ferrari 458 Italia and a Lamborghini Murcielago LP670-4 Super Veloce.
Not a photo on a screen, not a press image. 2 machines that represented the absolute peak of what was being produced at that time, sitting in the same space, in front of a man whose entire adult life had been building toward exactly this kind of encounter without him ever framing it that way. The specific electricity of that, the feeling that any genuine car enthusiast will recognize immediately, is the emotional origin of everything that followed. He filmed them. The footage was short, rough, nothing polished by the standards of what the channel would eventually produce. He uploaded it to a YouTube channel he had just created under the name Shmee 150. And that was it. No grand launch strategy, no announcement, no production team waiting in the wings. Just a man, a camera, and 2 cars that stopped him completely. What most people don't realize is how long it then took for anything to happen. Not weeks, not months, years. He uploaded hundreds of videos before the economics of the channel became meaningful. Hundreds of pieces of content produced, edited, uploaded, and released into the world.
It wasn't a business, there was no business plan, there was no partner or monetization scheme on YouTube, nothing like that. It was all for fun, to meet with some of you guys, to meet with some fellow car spotters around London, to engage with the comments, and it was such an interesting world to mix various of my passions.
Before YouTube advertising revenue began to offset even a fraction of the time being invested, he was doing it in parallel with his day job, building, and the channel in the margins of a life that still revolved around an office. His employer was reportedly supportive enough to allow him time to pursue it, but the income wasn't there yet. The audience was growing, slowly, and there was no guarantee, none, that it would ever become what it eventually became. That uncertainty is the part of this story that the rumor never had to explain away, because the rumor assumed certainty, assumed that the outcome was predetermined by money or connections or background advantage. The actual story involved years of uploading content into uncertainty with nothing but conviction as a business plan. The hardest decision in the story. Here is the moment the script of this man's life turns on. At some point, after years of uploading, after hundreds of videos, After building an audience that was real but not yet financially transformative, Tim Burton had to make a decision. Stay in the job, keep the salary, keep the stability, keep the career path that anyone looking at his CV would have told him to protect, or leave. Not because the channel had already succeeded in any way that would have been obvious from the outside, but because he believed, based on the trajectory and his own conviction, that it could become something worth risking everything for. He walked away from the investment consultancy, from the reliable income, from the professional structure that had given him time to recover after 2 plans had already fallen apart. He went all in on a YouTube channel about supercars in the early years of the creator economy, before there was an established playbook for how to make that work, before there were managers and talent agencies and brand deal structures designed specifically for automotive creators, before multi-stream revenue models for content creators were widely understood or documented. He stepped off the edge of a stable career and into something that had no guarantee attached to it. And get this. This is the part of the story the rumor never engaged with, because the rumor assumed that the money had to come from somewhere easy, from a background advantage, or a financial safety net, or a silent backer operating off-screen. What the rumor could never explain is why someone with that kind of advantage would also spend years grinding out hundreds of videos before earning meaningful income from them. The grind and the assumed privilege don't fit in the same story. Only one of them is real. How the money actually works. And now we get to the rumor, the actual accusation, the thing people have been arguing about in comment sections for years. Here is the confirmed, verified, publicly documented answer. Tim Burton's income is not one thing. It is a system. YouTube advertising revenue from a channel that has surpassed 1 billion total views. The kind of scale where ad revenue alone becomes a serious number that most people outside the creator economy significantly underestimate.
I've uploaded more than 5,000 YouTube videos. That means on average more than 1 per day, along with countless other content across stories, reels, pictures, you name it, on different platforms.
Sponsorships and brand partnerships with automotive manufacturers, luxury brands, and technology companies who pay for access to an audience of nearly 3 million highly engaged car enthusiasts. Merchandise, consulting work with manufacturers, verified partnerships that have included brands like BMW and Bugatti, revenue from events, appearances, and business ventures that have expanded steadily as the brand grew. But here's the catch. None of this appeared at once. The channel didn't launch with sponsorships already in place. The consulting work didn't exist in 2010. The merchandise wasn't available at the beginning. Each revenue stream was added as the previous one proved viable, as the audience grew large enough to make the next level of commercial relationship possible. The collection was built the same way, not acquired all at once, but assembled incrementally as each new phase of the business unlocked a new level of purchasing power. His first car was a Renault Clio, not a Ferrari, a Clio. His first sports car was an Aston Martin Vantage, a meaningful step forward, but nowhere near the machines that would eventually fill the schmuseum. Every car after that was bought with money earned through the platform, added to the fleet as the revenue grew to support it. The rumor assumed a lump sum origin. The reality was a compound accumulation. That distinction is everything. The schmuseum is the answer made physical. What most people see when they look at the schmuseum is a trophy room, a monument to success, an impressive garage with expensive machines lined up in it. That reading is understandable. It is also wrong. The schmuseum, once a milking parlor, converted into a professional headquarters for the Shmee 150 operation, is not a monument. It is evidence. Every car in that building is a data point in the confirmation of something the rumors said was impossible. The Ford GT is there because the revenue was real. The McLaren Senna is there because the brand partnerships were real. The Ferrari SF90 Stradale, the Mercedes-AMG GT Black Series, the Lamborghini Huracan STO, the Zenvo TSRS. Each one of them represents a year, or a deal, or a phase of the business that paid off. Think about that for a moment. Every machine in that garage has a financial origin story. Not an inheritance, and not a windfall. A brand partnership that closed. A consulting contract that delivered. A merchandise line that found its market. A YouTube revenue stream that crossed a threshold. The Schmuseum also serves as a functioning commercial asset, a filming location that automotive manufacturers pay to access.
It's quite interesting to see behind the scenes of managing the garage, the car collection, and sharing more of that here on the Schmuseum channel as opposed to the Schmee channel, which is, let's say, more about specific ideas, visiting collections, test drives of cars, going to certain places, or perhaps the, big occasions, let's say, the event.
A production facility, a physical embodiment of brand value that exists independently of the YouTube channel itself. It has its own social media channels, its own YouTube presence. Major car companies seek access to it specifically because of what the Schmee 150 name means inside the enthusiast community. When you understand that, the building stops looking like a reward and starts looking like what it actually is. The most visible piece of proof that the long game worked. What the channel actually built. And get this. By the time Tim Burton was in his mid-30s, the thing he had built was no longer a YouTube channel with a car collection. It was a media company, the broader Schmee 150 ecosystem, the main channel with its billion-plus views, the Schmuseum and its associated presence, the merchandise operation, the brand partnerships, the consulting work, the book, represents a structure that most creators in any vertical never reach. The book alone is worth pausing on. In 2016, he published Living the Supercar Dream through Blink Publishing, a book documenting his travels, his experiences, and the journey from car spotter to one of the most recognized names in the automotive content world. His Facebook presence has been reported to reach over 50 million people per month. His audience on YouTube sits at nearly 3 million. His Instagram, TikTok, and other platforms each carry significant followings of their own. That is not the profile of a man who bought his way into a collection and filmed it for content. That is the profile of someone who built an audience first and bought the cars as the audience made it possible. More than that, it is the profile of someone who understood, at a very early stage of the creator economy, that the content itself was not the product.
Never did I think that it might grow to the platform that it has grown to now, with 2.3 million subscribers on YouTube, 2.6 million followers on Facebook, 1.5 million on Instagram, 300,000 on TikTok, also 60,000 on Twitter.
The audience was the product. The relationships with manufacturers, the consulting contracts, the commercial infrastructure built around the channel, those are the natural result of an audience that cares deeply, watches consistently, and trusts the person behind the camera. That trust was earned over 17 years. It cannot be purchased. It cannot be inherited. And the rumor, for all its persistence, never had an answer for that. The length of the long game here is what the rumor always missed, the timeline. People look at the Schmee 150 of 2025, the professional garage, the global brand, the billion views, and work backwards from a result. They assume the result required a shortcut, because the gap between the starting point and the destination looks too large to have been covered legitimately. But here is the actual timeline. He started posting car content in 2008. He uploaded his first YouTube video in January 2010. He spent years after that building an audience with no income guarantee, uploading hundreds of videos before the economics made financial sense, maintaining a day job in parallel, making a leap into full-time content creation before the infrastructure to support it even existed. The audience watching his videos in 2015 or 2018 or 2022 was not watching the beginning. They were arriving midway through a story that had already been running for years. The early videos, the raw footage, the unpolished event coverage, the car spots shared with a handful of followers, those are the chapters most of his current subscribers have never seen. The version of Schmee 150 most people discovered was already successful. The version that actually built what they were discovering had been working in the background for nearly a decade before they arrived. At 38, Tim Burton has been documenting his love of cars for roughly 17 years. The billion views were not earned in a year. The collection was not assembled in a year. The Schmuseum was not built in a year. The entire operation, the brand partnerships, the consulting contracts, the book deal, the professional garage, was constructed incrementally, one upload at a time, over nearly 2 decades. When you lay the timeline out properly, the gap that looked suspicious closes entirely. There is no missing money. There is no hidden source. There is only time, applied consistently, to something that turned out to be worth building. Confirmed. So at 38, here is what Shmee150 confirms. The rumor said the numbers didn't add up, that the collection was too large, too fast, too unexplained for the stated sources of income to cover it, that something else must be at work, a family fortune, a hidden backer, a version of ownership that wasn't what it appeared to be. The rumor was wrong, not because Tim Burton is exceptionally lucky, not because the platform made it easy, but because the rumor assumed a shortcut, and the reality was a 17-year accumulation of work that most people never saw, because most of it happened before his current audience found him. He was uploading when monetization was limited. He was building connections when the automotive creator economy barely existed. He was buying his first sports car when the channel was still something he did around a full-time job. By the time the audience arrived in numbers large enough to generate serious revenue, the foundation had already been laid. Years of it, invisible to anyone who only showed up for the result. And then the foundation paid off. Every machine in that garage, every square meter of the schmuseum, every consulting contract with a manufacturer whose name you would recognize without a prompt, all of it confirmed. The rumor had been working backwards from the wrong starting point all along. The answer was hidden in plain sight, buried in the upload dates of hundreds of early videos, in the years before the audience was large enough to notice. The money didn't come from nowhere. It came from 2008, from a Facebook page nobody remembers, from hundreds of early uploads that most of his current audience has simply never gone back to find. From a man who walked away from a stable career on a deliberate, calculated bet, stayed consistent long after most people would have stopped, and turned out to be right about something that hadn't yet been proven when he made the decision to believe in it.